The room went silent the moment my cousin slammed her hand on the dining table. "You need to stop acting like this house belongs to you, Olivia," she snapped. Every conversation stopped. Every fork froze in midair. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I was 36 years old, sitting in the same dining room where I'd celebrated birthdays, Christmas mornings, and family reunions my entire life. Yet somehow, in front of everyone, my cousin Emily had just declared that I didn't belong there. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "You shouldn't get too comfortable. When the truth comes out, everyone will finally understand." The silence that followed felt suffocating. I looked around the table. My aunt looked terrified. My uncle stared at his plate. Even my grandmother's longtime friend, Martha, suddenly seemed uncomfortable. Nobody defended me. Nobody said Emily was wrong. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if there was something about my family that I didn't know. What I didn't realize was that this moment would uncover a secret buried for over 3 decades. A secret hidden in old records, forgotten promises, and one heartbreaking sacrifice. And by the time I learned the truth, I would wish I'd never doubted the people I loved. My name is Olivia Bennett. And this is the story of how my cousin convinced me I didn't belong in my own childhood home. The house sat on Maple Street. A beautiful white farmhouse surrounded by giant oak trees. Most people thought it belonged to my grandparents. But to me, it was much more than that. It was home. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7 years old. I barely remembered the funeral. I barely remembered the weeks afterward. But I remembered my grandmother opening her front door and kneeling down to hug me. "You'll never be alone again," she whispered. And she kept that promise. She raised me. She packed my lunches. She sat through every school play. She celebrated every birthday. That house held every memory I had left of family. Which was why Emily's accusation hurt so much. At first, I tried to ignore it. Emily and I had never been particularly close. She was 2 years older than me and always seemed resentful of the attention Grandma gave me. Still, her comment lingered in my mind. Especially because nobody challenged her. A week later, things became stranger. I stopped by the house after work. Grandma was 91 and needed help with groceries. As I walked toward the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the living room. Emily was there. So was my Uncle Richard. They immediately stopped talking when they saw me. The room became awkwardly quiet. Emily forced a smile. "Hey, Olivia." Richard looked nervous. Too nervous. As if I'd interrupted something important. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Then more clues appeared. A month later, I found Emily searching through old filing cabinets in Grandma's study. When she noticed me, she quickly closed the drawer. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "Nothing." Her answer came too fast. Then she left. The next morning, I noticed several folders were missing. Property records. Tax documents. Old family paperwork. My stomach tightened. Why would Emily need those? The questions kept growing. Then came the phone calls. Several times, I arrived unexpectedly and found Emily speaking quietly with someone outside. Every time she saw me, she ended the call immediately. One afternoon, I overheard part of a conversation. "She still doesn't know," Emily whispered. My heart stopped. Who didn't know what? When she noticed me standing nearby, she turned pale. The call ended seconds later. That night, I barely slept. For the first time, I began wondering if Emily was trying to take the house. Grandma's health had been declining. Everyone knew difficult decisions would eventually have to be made. Was Emily preparing for that? Was she collecting documents? Building a case? Trying to prove I wasn't entitled to anything? The thought made me sick. But then another clue appeared. And this one was impossible to ignore. 2 weeks later, I was helping Grandma organize old photo albums. A yellow envelope slipped from between the pages. Before I could open it, Grandma snatched it away. Actually snatched it. I had never seen her move so fast. Her hands trembled. Her face turned white. That's private. I stared at her. Grandma, what is it? Nothing important. Her voice cracked. Then she hid the envelope inside a drawer. For the first time in my life, my grandmother looked frightened of me. Not angry. Not annoyed. Frightened. The image haunted me. Because suddenly Emily's accusations didn't seem so ridiculous anymore. Maybe there really was something they weren't telling me. Maybe there always had been. The following week, things escalated again. I arrived early one morning and found Emily leaving the county records office. A thick folder rested under her arm. When she saw me, she froze. Then quickly shoved the folder into her car. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Just running errands." Liar. Her expression hardened. For a second, something flashed across her face. Guilt. Or maybe victory. Then she drove away. I stood there watching her disappear. The feeling in my chest was growing heavier. Because every clue pointed toward the same terrifying possibility. Emily knew something about my past. Something everyone else already knew. Something they were hiding from me. That evening, I confronted Aunt Susan. "Why does Emily keep saying I don't belong here?" The color drained from her face. She looked away. And that answer terrified me more than any words could have. Because innocent people don't react like that. Finally, she whispered something that changed everything. "Olivia, some family secrets stay buried for a reason." I stared at her. What secret? Tears filled her eyes. But she refused to answer. And in that moment, I became certain. Certain that my family had lied to me. Certain that Emily had discovered the truth. Certain that the home I loved wasn't really mine. But I was about to discover something even worse. Because hidden inside an old town archive was a record that would force me to question everything I'd ever believed. And when I finally saw that document, my entire world would change. Emily seemed closer than ever to proving I didn't belong in the only home I'd ever known. But what she found inside the town archives would reveal a family secret far bigger than anyone imagined, and it would make me believe the people I loved had betrayed me completely. I still remember the exact moment I stopped trusting my family. It happened 3 days after Aunt Susan told me some secrets were meant to stay buried. I drove to the county archives myself. If everyone else was hiding something, I would find the truth on my own. The building sat behind the old courthouse, a place most people never visited unless they were researching family history. I wasn't prepared for what I found. An elderly clerk helped me search property records connected to my grandparents' address. At first, everything looked normal. Then a strange entry appeared. My grandparents' home had briefly been transferred decades earlier. Not to my father. Not to my aunt. Not to anyone I recognized. The name listed on the document made my heart stop. Olivia Harper. My name. Or at least my first name. The document was dated almost 30 years before I was born. I stared at the screen in confusion. That can't be right. The clerk adjusted his glasses. Old records sometimes tell interesting stories. My hands were shaking. Who was Olivia Harper? Why did she share my name? And why was my grandparents' house connected to her? The questions followed me home. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every clue I'd collected over the past few months suddenly felt connected. Emily's secret phone calls. The missing files. The hidden envelope. The nervous looks. The whispers. The silence whenever I entered a room. I became convinced everyone knew the truth except me. And the more I investigated, the worse things became. A week later, I found a receipt lying inside Grandma's kitchen trash. Most people would have ignored it. I didn't. The receipt was from a law office. A law office that specialized in estate matters. My chest tightened. Grandma wasn't discussing her future with me. She was discussing it with Emily. At least that's what I believed. I called Grandma immediately. Why are you meeting lawyers? There was a long pause. Too long. Then she said softly, some things need to be prepared. Prepared. Not explained. Prepared. I hung up feeling sick. Every answer created more questions. Then came the discovery that pushed me over the edge. A month later, I arrived unexpectedly at the house. Emily's car sat outside. So did a vehicle I didn't recognize. As I approached the back porch, I heard voices through an open window. One belonged to Emily. The other belonged to a man. She can never find out this way, the man said. Emily sighed. I know. Promise me you'll wait. I've waited 30 years already. 30 years. The number hit me like a punch. I backed away before they could see me. My heart was racing. 30 years. Almost exactly my age. Whatever secret they were discussing clearly involved me. For days, I couldn't think about anything else. Friends noticed. My coworker Jenna finally cornered me during lunch. You look exhausted. I laughed bitterly. Turns out my whole life might be a lie. She thought I was joking. I wasn't. Then things became even worse. One evening, Martha, Grandma's lifelong friend, visited me unexpectedly. She looked nervous. Older than usual. As if she'd spent weeks carrying something heavy. Olivia, she said softly. We need to talk. I invited her inside. For a moment, I thought she was finally going to explain everything. Instead, she only made things worse. She handed me an old photograph. I stared at it. A young woman stood beside my grandparents. She looked remarkably familiar. Almost like me. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Who is she? I asked. Martha looked away. I can't tell you. What? I promised. Anger exploded inside me. Everyone keeps saying that. Tears filled Martha's eyes. I'm sorry. Then she left. Just left. Leaving me alone with a photograph and 1,000 unanswered questions. That night, I made a decision. No more waiting. No more guessing. No more secrets. The next family gathering happened 2 weeks later. And that's when everything exploded. The dining room was packed. Grandma sat quietly at the head of the table. Emily sat across from me. For most of the evening, nobody mentioned the tension. Then Emily made a mistake. She referred to the house as the property. Not home. Not Grandma's house. The property. Something inside me snapped. I stood so suddenly my chair nearly fell over. Enough. The room froze. Everyone looked at me. I pointed directly at Emily. You've spent months telling people I don't belong here. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I turned toward the rest of the family. You've all been lying to me. Grandma's eyes filled with tears. Aunt Susan looked devastated. Uncle Richard stared at the floor. Their silence felt like confirmation. I looked back at Emily. Tell me the truth. She stood slowly. For a second, I thought she'd finally admit everything. Instead, she said something that destroyed me. I never wanted you to find out like this. The room went silent. I felt physically sick. Find out what? Find out I wasn't family? Find out I'd been living a lie? Every horrible possibility crashed through my mind. Then Emily whispered 5 words. You were never supposed to. She stopped. Grandma suddenly stood. Enough. The force in her voice shocked everyone. At 91 years old, she rarely raised her voice. Now she was trembling. Tears streamed down her face. I won't let this happen. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. For several seconds, the room remained frozen. Then Grandma looked at me. And I saw something I'd never seen before. Not fear. Not guilt. Heartbreak. Pure heartbreak. She reached for my hand. Tomorrow, she whispered. I'll tell you everything. I wanted answers immediately. But one look at her face stopped me. Whatever truth she'd been carrying had clearly hurt her for decades. The next morning, she asked me to meet her at the Old Town Archives. The same archives where Emily had been searching. The same archives where the strange property record existed. The same archives where a single forgotten document had been waiting for over 30 years. And when the clerk placed that record in front of me, every clue suddenly made sense. The phone calls. The meetings. The hidden envelope. The lawyer visits. The photograph. The fear. The lies. None of them meant what I thought they meant. Not even close. Because the truth wasn't about greed. It wasn't about inheritance. And it wasn't about forcing me out of my childhood home. The truth was far more heartbreaking. A sacrifice so enormous that my grandmother had spent 30 years protecting it. And the moment I read that Old Town record, I dropped to my knees and cried. Because the person I believed had betrayed me had actually spent her entire life saving me. The Old Town record revealed a secret no one expected, a sacrifice made decades earlier that changed Olivia's life forever. But when she learns who gave up everything for her, the guilt becomes almost impossible to bear. I couldn't stop crying. The Old Town record lay open on the table in front of me. My hands trembled so badly that I could barely hold the pages. For 36 years, I had believed my grandparents simply took me in after my parents died. For months, I had believed my family was hiding something terrible from me. But the truth was nothing like I imagined. It was far more painful. Far more beautiful. And far more heartbreaking. Grandma sat beside me quietly. Emily stood a few feet away. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The document spoke for itself. 37 years earlier, before I was born, my parents had lost everything. My father owned a small construction company. A trusted business partner had stolen money, forged signatures, and left my parents buried in debt. Within months, they faced bankruptcy. They were about to lose their home. Their future. Everything. Then came the part that shattered me. The record showed that my grandparents had legally transferred ownership of their house. Not to protect themselves. Not for tax reasons. But to protect my parents. The temporary owner listed in the record wasn't a stranger. It was my mother. Her maiden name had been Harper. Olivia Harper wasn't another woman. It was the name my mother intended to give me if I were born a girl. Years before I existed. My grandparents had placed the property under that family trust to shield it from creditors and save my parents from complete financial ruin. They risked everything. Everything. I looked up at Grandma through tears. You gave away your house? She nodded. We would have given away anything. My chest tightened. But why hide it? Grandma's eyes filled with tears. Because there was more. Much more. The clerk handed me another file. Inside was a letter. A letter written by my grandfather. The date was only 3 weeks before he died. I recognized his handwriting instantly. My vision blurred as I began reading. If Olivia ever learns the truth, tell her she was never our burden. She was our blessing. I stopped reading. My throat closed. Grandma gently squeezed my hand. Keep going. I wiped my eyes and continued. Your parents were proud people. They never wanted Olivia to know how close they came to losing everything. We promised we would protect that dignity. Not because we were ashamed. Because we loved them. Tears rolled down my face. But then I reached the paragraph that explained everything. Everything. The reason for Emily's phone calls. The hidden envelope. The meetings. The lawyer. The old photograph. The strange behavior. All of it. Grandpa had written. The trust protecting the house expires when Olivia reaches 36. At that point, all records become public. Before then, make sure she understands the truth. Make sure she knows her parents fought for her every day of their lives. I lowered the letter. I couldn't breathe. 36. My current age. That's why everyone had suddenly become nervous. That's why Emily had been searching records. That's why lawyers were involved. That's why conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Not because they were trying to push me out. Because they were trying to prepare me. My entire body shook. I turned toward Emily. The cousin I had spent months accusing in my mind. The cousin I believed was plotting against me. The cousin I thought wanted my home. Why didn't you tell me? Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in months, I saw her pain. Not anger. Pain. Because Grandma asked me not to. My heart broke. She continued. I was trying to help organize everything before the records became public. I stared at her. The phone calls? The lawyer. The meetings? The archive clerk. The files? The trust documents. Every clue suddenly transformed. Every suspicious moment became an act of protection. Not betrayal. Love. I buried my face in my hands. The guilt was overwhelming. I had spent months believing the worst about people who had spent decades protecting me. Then Grandma pulled something from her purse. The yellow envelope. The same envelope she had hidden from me months earlier. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was an old photograph. The same woman Martha had shown me. I finally understood why she looked familiar. It was my mother. Young. Smiling. Pregnant with me. Standing in front of the house. My house. Our house. On the back of the photo were 6 handwritten words. One day this will be hers. I completely lost control. The tears came so hard I couldn't stop them. Grandma wrapped her arms around me. Just like she had when I was 7. Just like she had after my parents died. Just like she had every time life became too heavy. I'm sorry, I whispered. Again and again. I'm so sorry. Grandma kissed the top of my head. You have nothing to apologize for. Yes, I do. No. Her voice cracked. You were scared. The room fell silent. Then Emily sat beside me. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, she smiled through tears. You know, you're incredibly stubborn. I laughed despite everything. So are you. That was enough. The wall between us finally disappeared. Weeks later, the entire family gathered again at the house. But this time, the atmosphere felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Honest. For the first time in months, nobody was hiding anything. Grandma asked me to read Grandpa's letter aloud. Halfway through, almost everyone was crying. Including me. Especially me. When I finished, nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Grandma shared one final truth. A truth I will never forget. She looked around the room and said, families aren't built by ownership papers. They're built by sacrifice. The words settled over us. Simple. Powerful. True. Because for months, I thought belonging came from legal records. Property documents. Names on paper. But belonging had never come from any of those things. Belonging came from love. From the grandmother who raised me. From the grandfather who protected me. From relatives who carried a difficult secret because they promised to honor my parents. From a cousin who spent months trying to keep that promise. The house wasn't special because my name was connected to it. It was special because every room held evidence of love. Love that had survived grief. Love that had survived loss. Love that had survived generations. A year later, we placed my parents' photograph in the front hallway. Right near the entrance. The first thing visitors see when they walk inside. Beneath it sits a small plaque. A quote from my grandfather's letter. A quote I now live by every day. Home is not where you are born. Home is where people choose to keep loving you. And every time I walk through that front door, I remember something important. The truth may hurt. Secrets may divide us. Assumptions may break our hearts. But compassion has the power to heal what suspicion destroys. And sometimes, the people we believe have betrayed us are actually the people who have spent years quietly protecting us. That is the lesson my family gave me. And it changed my life forever.